My name is Jen, JennMarie Art and Equestrian, and I have a passion for helping people improve their relationships with their horse using liberty-based methods. We're at a Liberty Festival. Is everybody here somewhat familiar with Liberty horse training? I've seen a lot of nods. That's awesome, very cool. All right, I've been a member of the Liberty Horse Association, I think I started the year after they were organized. I've come to almost every single fall event here, and I just recently started teaching. So I'm very excited to have this opportunity. I've been training and showing horses for over 20 years or more, so I might age myself a little bit there. But I have worked under trainers like Warwick Schiller was a big influence. I'm seeing some head nods here. Luke Gingrich also has really influenced a lot of the way that I train. I've also worked with Dan James and his wife Elizabeth a little bit, so really good stuff. I started out as a dressage rider. Actually, let me go back a step further. I started out riding a muddy backyard pony. Can I get my muddy backyard pony, people? Yeah. Yeah. Well, and then I became an intern to a dressage rider. So I learned a lot. Then I started working with a guy in the Pirelli world. So I learned a lot about Liberty horsemanship there, and also starting youngsters. I started young horses for about 4 to 5 years after that, and I learned a lot. I made a lot of mistakes. And if anything keeps you on your toes, it's getting on a horse for the first time, let me tell you. So my passion is very much in the behavior area of things. I do some showing. I enjoy dressage. I really have gotten into the working equitation. Very excited to see where that is going, and the direction it's going in the US. So hopefully we'll see a little bit more of that. Also some Western and that sort of thing. So I've dabbled in a lot of things. But I have found going back to Liberty has always improved every area of training and discipline, because the horse has a choice. The horse doesn't always have to be forced, you know, like we have some methods in the past that were somewhat forceful, and a lot of those methods are being replaced by a softer, gentler approach. So I tend to ramble a little bit. I just grab my notes here so I stay on track. All right. Let's see. So I'm going to talk a little bit on the topic of choice with the horse. Has anyone ever tried to make your horse do something that they really didn't want to do? I know I have. And here's some chuckles. Yes, they are a 1,000-pound toddler. So when I was young, I had gotten this draft paint cross named Nova, and I loved her. She was a teddy bear. She was sweet, so laid back. I thought, she's going to be a breeze to train. I just started learning about training at this point. So Nova was a draft cross. She was very strong. And I found that if I tried to do, come on in guys, I just started talking because no one was here and there was a microphone, so please come on in and make yourself comfortable. So this little big horse Nova, as soon as I started to put pressure on her and I wanted to tell her what to do because, you know, I was 20 years old and I knew everything about training because I've ridden with a trainer for a year. So this horse would bolt, gone. And here I would be at the end of the road, teeny tiny me getting dragged through the mud by this horse. So, and I thought, she just needs more discipline. So I put her in a round pen and I decided I would, you know, I would do the whole worker until she's tired. No, she jumps the round pen. and proceeded to find all sorts of nifty ways to get away from me. And this horse had me just scratching my head. Have you ever found that horses that get you to that point where you're scratching your head, that's the horse that's going to grow you. Yeah. So the easy ones, they're great, they're fun. But if you want to grow, the tricky ones will do that for you, whether you like it or not. So, needless to say, actually Nova was one of the best horses for teaching me to learn how to give her a choice and to change me so that she would change. I have to look inside myself and find out where am I coming at this from? Am I coming at this horse like a boss? Like, I'm gonna make you do it. You think that's gonna make her wanna do it? No, she just kept running. So I had to come at it at a whole different point. I had to be a little bit more tactful and pleasant for her to be around. And this horse was the first one I rode bridleless on, the first one I learned how to do liberty circles on, the first horse I taught how to lay down. This horse took me so far. It was amazing. So she is now a vaulting horse. I went to a barn and these folks just fell in love with her. I had some other horses I was looking at advancing in the show world, and she went to be loved on by about 20 little girls on a vaulting club. That's Nova's story. All right. Welcome to Teach Your Horse Anything. Anything. The art behind the behavior conditioning system. Has anyone heard of the word behavior conditioning? Yeah, a few folks. It's a big word. I've spent so many years trying to figure out what the operant conditioning system is, what it isn't, how to use it. And I've found a way to describe this that is much easier to understand on a day-to-day basis. So this is what I'd like to bring you today. So today I'm going to show you how behavior works, how training works, and I want to help you leave with a plan of how to teach your horse anything. All right, I'm going to go to my next slide here. Let's just do a few quick definitions, just so we're on the same page. When I use these words, you know what I'm thinking, and then they line up with how you would like, you understand them. In my definition, training is getting your idea to be your animal's idea. It's modifying a behavior in the horse, ultimately leading to a change in behavior. Like I said before, we really can't force a horse to do anything they don't want to do. But what we can do is change their motivation. And in very small changes, we work to a large change. So I'm going to talk about influencing a behavior, which builds into a change of behavior. So we are going to take some time to break this down here. Let's go to the next definition. So what is animal behavior? It's like barking in the middle of a crowd. That's a behavior. It's how an animal or a human, because we have a lot of mammalian attributes, just like our horses, it's how they respond to stimulus. We have environment stimulus here. We're all feeling stimulated by having a beautiful Labrador come and say hi to everybody. So how is our behavior changing right now due to our environment? We're going, aww, right? So the environment can cause a behavior change. And to that degree too, I want to add internal and external stimulation. So we can have an environment change, we can also have an internal change. So something happens emotionally, psychologically, that is going to affect how we respond. So we do need to know the cause of the behavior before we can actually start to find out how to influence it. Let's go to our next definition here. So how can we change the behavior? So even if you are not a trainer, or you don't consider yourself a trainer, you're a leisurely horse owner, every moment you're with your horse, you are influencing them, whether you're thinking of it or not. So when you walk out of your door and your horse sees you, and they're like, every day she comes out at 8 o'clock and she beats me. Yay, hi. So your horse is gonna neigh, get excited in anticipation. That's you, whether you know it or not, training your horse. So everything we do with our horses is influencing their behavior one way or another. And the more aware we are of that, the faster we'll be able to influence the behavior. So it does take some self-observation. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But to just be aware that every minute you're with your horse, you have an opportunity to influence the behavior. Let's move on here. Anything else I want to talk about? Yes, so I'm going to run through this quickly. We as trainers organize the stimulus and consequences that the horse experiences after each behavior with the goal of increasing or decreasing the horse's desire to perform the behavior again. We're going to get into all these more later, but if you want to take a picture or something of that, it is a nice clean definition of how we're going to be changing behavior going forward. We referred to consequence. Let's talk about consequence. Consequence is the outcomes that a horse experiences after each behavior. Consequences can be in the form of a reward. So your horse does something that you like, or maybe the horse neighs at you or gets excited, they're anticipating something. You're rewarding the behavior of them running to the fence to get that grain that you pour into your bucket. Or we can use a lack of reward. Let's say your horse comes to the fence and the bucket and he starts kicking the fence, right? You might say, even instinctually, oh, I want to give you your grain while you're doing that. Has anyone done that? Said, I'm not going to give you your grain until you stop kicking the wall. That is lack of reward. We're keeping it until the behavior changes. Okay. And then we also have a pressure or corrections. So pressure can be in the form of physical, it can be in the form of mental or increased energy, and a correction is an increased energy to an action your horse gives you. So if your horse kicks out at you or something, that is energy towards you. Your correction is to put energy towards them to match it. A pressure that does not necessarily need an action from the horse. A pressure is a request from us to have the horse do something. And a correction is when the horse does something to us and we block it. We say don't, right? We create a wall and we push back on that. Just to briefly define those two things. And then we can have a lack of pressure or correction. Perhaps the horse considers kicking and he just lifts his foot so his ear's back. We've all seen that. But then nothing happens, so you might say, and then nothing happens, so you're going to go about your day because he changed his mind. You withdrew that pressure or that correction. 4 ways to respond. So, in a nutshell, I'm not used to having a mic, this is like my first time. The horse performs a behavior. The behavior results in an immediate consequence of one of those 4 we just talked about. The animal learns to associate that behavior with the consequence that happened immediately afterwards. This learning that the horse is experiencing influences whether the behavior is repeated in the future. As the behavior changes, it becomes habit, and our goals are met. There you go, that's it, guys. No, I'm just kidding, there's more. But this is a good breakdown of the basic steps of how we change behavior. And I'm not going to joke, it does take time. So we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but some of this behavior change is going to be, it can with some horses be a very long process, but it is not impossible. I've seen some pretty incredibly dangerous behaviors turn around over time in the right kind of consistency. So it just takes a lot of awareness and a lot of thought every moment you're with your horse to influence the behavior change. All right, and the basis of influencing the behavior change is using that pressure, release and reward, and ignore at the right time. And that's kind of the tricky part too, is at the right time. If we time these correctly, we can guide that behavior into the direction we want to go. All right, this was mine. Ta-da! That's it, guys. Super easy. All right, let's move on. So I want to get down into, let's turn this around. We're talking about the horse a lot. I want to turn it around into ourselves. The best way we can help our horses is to work on ourselves. This is the baseline that is not always talked about at horse lessons, at clinics and seminars. Often we're hearing how we're going to work with the horse. We're going to teach the horse. We're going to pressure the horse, take the pressure off what we're going to ask them to do. We are the greatest tool to influence our horse. The more that we work on ourselves, the more change we're going to see in our horse. And that includes emotional, physical, psychological. So it takes an inner look sometimes. Are we going to the barn with the stress of the day? You know, we've just come from work and someone said something mean to us and, you know, all that. And we go to the barn and we're carrying that busy mind, busy, you know. It's hard to focus on the horse. The horse is a very simple creature. And sometimes horses are very therapeutic for us. They can help us find relief from all the stresses of life because they are so simple. But we have to remember that the horse is not our therapist. They are therapeutic, but they're not our therapist. We do need to come to them as a partner. If we are going to take the position to change their behavior, we first do need to check on ourselves and make sure that we are emotionally regulated to help that horse stay emotionally regulated. So this is something that I had to do myself, and the more balance that I got, the better my communication and everything got with my horses. So it does take a little bit of an inner life sometimes. We're gonna do some exercises. All right, this is one of my favorite things to help myself at the barn, be present before I work with my horse. So let's just work on this exercise. You can close your eyes if you want. You can just relax, or you can keep your eyes open, write notes. But I want you to think, what are a few things you can physically feel right now? Let's just take a second. I know it's for me to feel the carpet. I'm feeling tags off. I'm not used to wearing a tag. Just kind of come into your own circle and think of the few things you can feel right now. And then after that, I want to bring your attention to 3 things that you can hear. I know you can hear my voice. What else can you hear in here? There's something going on with the air up in the ceiling. I can hear kind of a whir sound. But it kind of brings you back to yourself, doesn't it? And then if you want to open your eyes, I find three things that you can see right now. I know as an artist, when I'm observing my environment, I'm always looking for design. I'm looking at the nice neutral colors of this room and how it ties into this floor, which is more, has a pattern to it. I like that complexity, and I like the windows here, how it's like a third of the wall. So one of the design principles, we split things into thirds. So I just observe that type of thinking for me brings me back into my body, keeps me right here. So 3 things that we can see right now. All right, we'll do a body scan. I want you to just be aware of your body for a second. Do you feel any tension on the top of your head, your back, maybe your hands, or your feet? I know I tap my feet sometimes. Now imagine just releasing it fully, and take a deep breath. And let it out. So this is one of my tools. Just wanted to help guide you through that I use before going to the barn, especially after some emotional upheaval, something like that. And this is wonderful to do, even with your horse. While they're eating, I've often, as I do this, I felt the horse will go, even when I'm sitting on their back. They really do reflect our energy. It's just amazing. Okay. after all that. I did not expect this many people. I have a worksheet. If you guys, I will pass these around. If you guys want to take a picture of it, I don't know, is everyone going to share if I pass these around? I am happy, if you would like, I'm happy to take your email, and I will email you a copy of this if you are interested. So, actually, I'll just have you. But I'm going to hand these out so you guys can share them and take a look at them. Or you can come take a picture up here as well. But this is a worksheet at home that you can work on to work on your next behavior you'd like your horse to learn. Oh, thank you. Yeah. So I am actually writing a course for horsemanship right now. It's taking a little bit of time. I'm hoping it's going to be out next year. My cards, I have a box of cards up here also. So if you guys would like to know more information, please email me, and I have a lot more coming. But this is one tool that has really helped people stay on track when they have a new behavior they want to teach their horse. I really appreciate all you guys coming, by the way. This is the biggest crowd that I've ever spoken to. All right, let's start working through this. In the upper left, the first thing that you will want to determine when you want to teach your horse something new is what is the goal behavior? Let's define it. Let's make sure we have it written down so that we know black and white what it is we'd like our horse to learn. I'm going to use the example of the ground tie. Has anyone ground tied, trained their horse? Yeah, nice. It is, I highly recommend it. In fact, it's the first thing I teach all my baby horses when I'm starting. They're going to learn how to ground tie. So, let's just say we're teaching a ground tie. And if anybody does not know what that means, you're going to have a halter on your horse, you're going to stop your horse, you're going to drop the lead rope on the ground, walk away, and your horse should stay. This can transition to dropping the reins on the ground, and that's the sign for your horse to stay. This can also transition to a liberty style, where you have no halter on your horse, but you have a sign for your horse to know to stay. And then you can walk away, and you come back, and you can release them. I'm going to use that as my example behavior. So, what is the goal behavior? I would like my horse to stand still at a cue without moving any feet. That's what I would write on that top left. And then what signal would we use to ask for that behavior? Now when I teach, I let people know you're at liberty to take any cue you want to teach that horse. You could, Dan James has the whip in the air to stand still. That's a good one. That's pretty useful. I like that. Some people have the stay. My personal is the stop, the roadman stop. That's my cue. Some people might use a hold right. They might put their hand on the chest, something like that, or a verbal cue, stay, whoa, ho, whatever ones we want to use. So, but for the sake of clarity, define it. Make sure you know from the beginning exactly what signal you will use to ask for that behavior. And then we need a secondary cue. So I prefer a secondary cue, which is a way to let your horse know they're getting close. They're not there yet. I use my voice for this. My voice goes, hi, you're getting close, good job, right? And then if they're farther from it, it's like the hot and cold game. If they start doing something, they pick up a foot and they're like, I'm gonna leave. I'm gonna stand up and go, hey, right? So that's my secondary cue. I'm gonna have a way to communicate that they're hot and cold. And then we have to know what signal will we use to let the horse know that they got the right behavior. They have to know the moment they got it right, because if we remember from before, they do need to have a consequence immediately after the behavior to shape it into the right direction. So we have to know how to let the horse know, yes, that's correct. I've had folks use the word good, and it's as long as it's the exact same every time, and they get a reward from that, which could be in the form of treats, it can be the form of scratches, it can be the form of a release. Okay, let's go, you're done working. We'll talk about that a little bit more later, but we do need to let the horse know that they got the right behavior. Me personally, I am a big fan of clicker training. And when it's used correctly, so I want to talk about that a little bit later, how to teach your horse to take a treat correctly so you're not worried about your fingers getting bit off. We don't need any amputations. So let's move on. And then we're going to move to the right, upper right. We need to define what behaviors we're going to discourage. So now we know which ones we're going to say thumbs up, and then we got to know which ones are thumbs down. So let's say the horse, you go and you walk the horse and you stop and you drop the rope, okay, which should be a cue to stay. I'm going to use that in my example. My dropped rope is my cue. And then I go to walk and they're doing good, and then they start to paw, right? I have a horse that paws whenever I ask him to stand still, and he's a Friesian, so he's got big old feet. So it's a little bit of a dangerous thing for me. I don't really want him to decide to do that. So I would put in there, if they paw out of impatience, which is specific. We want to be very specific, because if he's pawing just to get a fly off of him, that's different, right? If you go to itch your forehead because you got a fly, it doesn't feel good to have a punishment or a consequence that doesn't feel good to that, because you just had a fly there, right? So we do have to understand why the horses do that behavior. So I would be specific, and I would say, when my horse is pawing out of impatience, that's the one I'm going to discourage. Okay. Let's see, what are some ways you can stimulate your horse towards the desired behavior? So now that we have defined what the behavior is, and what signal we will ask for that, and then what behaviors we want to discourage, we need to find a way to get them started, right? And this sometimes is the trickiest thing for folks. They'll say, well, I want my horse to say no when I scratch the chest, but how do I even start? Do I just stand there until they shake their head and have to? Sometimes that's a way you can teach them for sure. But there's some ways to accelerate it. Let's see. Oh, I think I have to search real quick. But there's a good, one of the best ways of training is to find out when your horse does it naturally. I was going to talk about this, but I can't remember if it was now or later. I get a little distracted, but we can talk about it now. So when you want to stimulate your horse towards the desired behavior, we want to think about our environment. When is the horse going to do it naturally? So in my case, what I would do is I would do my regular work with my young horse, maybe some lunging and things like that, or maybe let them play with their friends for a couple hours and tear around the paddock. When they're tired and they're sweaty, that's when I'm going to work on the stand and stay. Not in first thing in the morning when you're coming out with grain and they haven't had their hay yet and they're pawing the door, and that's not necessarily the best time. You can try, but I highly recommend trying to find a way to help them do the behavior naturally to begin with, to get the ball rolling. Let's see. Okay, and break down the goal into smaller, attainable steps. I'm just going to check my next slide. Okay, yep, we're doing good. So, in the example of asking my horse to ground tie, the first step I might write down there is I'm going to walk my horse because he knows how to walk already. I'm going to stop, and if the horse stops, I'm going to give them the reward consequence right away. Let's just say I'm going to click a treat. So I make the click sound because I don't carry a clicker, I use them. So I might click, and I'll give them a treat right there. And then we'll walk again. This is our step one. We're just stopping when my feet stop. Click, okay? And then we might go again. We might do this 4 or 5 or 6 times, even over several days. Different horses have different lengths of time it takes to catch on to a new idea. On that topic, I find that my horses that take a long time to catch on to an idea take a long time to forget it too. And the horses that get it really quick, within 30 seconds, they have forgotten it tomorrow already. So if your horse takes a long time to get it, please just know that might be a skill. That might be a talented horse, because once he does get it, he's not going to forget it. It's going to stick there for a while. My Frisian is like this. He's a little bit like, butterfly. And it takes him the longest out of all my horses. And once he picks it up, though, the very next day, he's so excited to do it again. So just, it's okay if your horse takes some time. Might be the best thing you've got. All right, where were we? Okay, and then your horse, let's see, your horse is stopping and you're giving them the treat. Great. And there's going to be a light bulb moment. And this is going to be for you to understand, because you know your horse. When you see that light bulb go off, has anyone seen the light bulb? You're teaching your horse something and they go, it's like the Helen Keller moment, when her hand was under the water and the teacher's spelling the word on her hand. And we know that historical story. And all of a sudden she realizes, this is a language. They're communicating with me. Wow, okay. So the horse has that same moment, and it's my favorite when I'm teaching a young horse. And they're like, wow, this random treat is coming out, that's cool. And then they realize, if I stop my feet, I turn the food vending machine on. Right? So the light bulb goes off. That's a great first step. This is step one, just get the light bulb to go off. And then your step two might be, okay, my horse stops when my feet stop. We'll just kind of speed through this a little bit so I don't keep telling stories. But then we might say, all right, my horse's feet is going to stop, and then I'm going to turn and look at them and let go. We're going to click and treat a reward in that way. And then we might say, I'm going to do that same thing and take a step back. So now we're on step three, okay? Now we're turning around, telling them to stay, and we're taking a step back. And then the next fourth step might be I'm walking a little circle, or a half circle in front of them, and they're not moving. And if they move, what are we going to do? We're going to use one of our consequences that discourage the behavior, right? So we're going to not give them a treat, that's withdrawing the reward. We might set them up again. Or we can use a secondary corrective cue, right? I find horses naturally, and children, and dogs, and humans, like a lower voice equals you might be getting in trouble. So it works across all species. Generally, I go to that to give them their secondary cue that that's not quite what you should be doing. And then once that all clicks and they're doing the unchained, this is over quite a bit of time. So you practice this every day. 5 minutes a day is much better than a 3-hour session one time a week. So you can do it in the time it takes to feed your brain. You can practice something small like this and build up to that behavior change that you want. All right, let's see. And then I kind of moved into the right hand lower square here already. But those motivators, what are we going to use for motivators? Knowing what influences your horse. Again, we can add that reward that feels good. One option, we can remove the stimulus that feels good. We can remove a pressure or a correction. Or I would say remove pressure, or we can add a correction. I prefer to use the word correction instead of punishment. Just if you were to look up the operant conditioning system, it is a very, very well-known scientific study by this guy, last name is Skinner. So if you do a Google search, you'll see it pop up. And he uses these really big words that took me forever to figure out. So I broke it down to this for myself so I could remember. And this is what I like to share with my students because it's just much easier to say, you have 4 options. Add a stimulus that feels good, remove a stimulus that feels good, remove a pressure that doesn't feel good, or add a pressure that doesn't feel good. So it takes some time to plan this out, but that's why we have this page, because you're deciding beforehand what will you do when you see each of these things. And this will help you as you go out to practice, guide you. What is it I would like to see in my horse? What is it I'm going to use to ask for that behavior? And what signal will we let the horse know that they're getting close? And what signal will we let them know that they got the behavior? Okay? Does that sound okay? Does that kind of make sense to everybody? I'm seeing some nods. Okay. It is easier in practice. If you were to take this home and study it and go out to your horse, and just start with this how do you stimulate your horse towards the right behavior. You're going to start to feel a flow of what to do with the behaviors you get, to either encourage it or discourage it, right? Okay. Let's see what we got next here. All right, a few tips. We talked about preparing ourselves emotionally, being present. Practice in small sessions at first. Like I said, 5 minutes a day, that's great. 10 minutes a day. In the time it takes to feed the grain to your horse, work on something. I once had my 2 young horses. I have 2 quarter horses, and they're 7 years old now. And I raised them, and they have taken me through so many phases. They're like my ILHA horses. They're the ones that I have taken here and shown and worked with, and they're pretty finished in Liberty at this point. But I remember I was at a barn. They were just 2 years old, and there wasn't any indoor arena. There was barely a stall, and I was doing all this self-care. It was basically like a shed with a big pasture that they could run around and grow up in. And it was winter and cold, and I thought, gosh, I want to work on something. It's just so icy out, I can't. So they had this little 10 by 12 stall. So I took the winter to teach them both how to bow. That was my goal. And the bow is a little bit tricky because they both have to pick up a leg, hold it up, and back up without moving any of the other feet to get down to that bow, right? So it is actually a little trickier than you'd think. But I was able to teach both of them doing about 10 minutes a day, because I had my little snack pack with me, and I would put their daily grain in there, and I would work on it for the time it takes to click and give them the daily grain. And by the time winter was over and spring was there, they were both bowing like a champ. So it is something to look, if you don't have an indoor arena, there is so much that you can work on in a small space that adds up to the bigger movements. There's so much you can do. So more about that later. Let's see, I have more information about that in my course coming up. If I keep talking about it, I'll start rambling. So, another tip, try and stay away from the corrections at first. It's very easy to get into wanting to say no to the horse. But I try and tell folks, if you can find yourself over 75% saying yes in a session, it's a good session. And if you're not, try to find more yeses. The more yeses we can say to the horse, the more they're going to feel, or the less they're going to feel controlled, and the more they're going to feel excited. One of my favorite sayings is, what a horse learns in pleasure, they remember forever. So if it was fun and interesting, and now it's a puzzle for them to figure out what it is you want, then they're going to remember that much longer than they are if there's a lot of corrections and it starts to feel like they're in trouble all the time, right? I mean, if anyone here, if you ever had somebody try to pressure you to do something you didn't really want to do, it's not a good feeling. So I go back to my early self. That's what I was doing to my horse, is I was just adding more pressure and never really making it fun. So we can definitely train horses with fun, balanced with discipline. So please don't throw away one side. We want to have both. But I have found it to be a good rule of thumb that if you are saying yes 75% of the time of the session, it's a good session. That's a good thing to aim for. And you'll have your sessions that are not that way. There's occasional ones here and there, especially with my young horses, where I have to be very firm, and it's a firm no. It's a boundary that needs to be reinforced. So please don't think that I'm saying to throw that away. But in general, over the large course of time you're spending with your horse, if there's a lot of yeses, you're going to find a happier, more eager horse to work with you than if there's too much pressure. So just to balance those out. And then, yes, our environment. Environment has a lot to do with how your horse is perceiving information. So I'm sure we all take a horse somewhere and everything changes, right? Yeah, so we want to be very progressive. When we're teaching our horse something new, really try to cut it down into those small pieces. When your horse is just super confident at home, you're going to have about 60% of that confidence when you go somewhere else. So just know that when you take them off site and you ask for that same behavior, you do have to take your time again. You're teaching a behavior again because now the environment has changed. So keep that in mind. Give yourself some grace, give your horse some grace. If you're planning on showing them, take them out when there's no expectations. Take them to a show without pulling them into the ring and just walk them. Then break it down into the small steps. Keep reinforcing the areas you want to be continued, the behaviors you would like to continue, and take your time. So one of the most problems I see between horses and their owners is too much too fast. So it's like 90% of the time. When I go to teach a lesson, or if someone comes to me with a behavior issue, it's almost always it was something happened too much too fast and created a problem. So we gotta back it way up and start from the beginning. Find that behavior, find out what worked, and slowly rebuild it. So, fun story, I have my Lusitano mare with me this week. She's being boarded down the road a little bit, and she's going to be in a clinic after this is all finished. But when I got her, she was raised in a pasture. She was pretty wild. She was a 3-year-old and just had been let to grow up. She came to me, it took 5 days to get her over to Michigan, where I live, and it was her first time on a trailer. So she was a little traumatized, and she didn't want anything to do with that trailer. So it was in November of last year that I got her, and so I thought, I'm gonna take all winter because I don't have an indoor. Right now I can trailer out, but she wasn't gonna trailer. So I took all winter and I said, we are just gonna get very comfy with the trailer, pressure-free. So it was finding her threshold, bringing her out up to that trailer. How far can she go? She can go 20 feet, and that's it. Okay, cool. That's her threshold. She's letting me know. We're gonna see if we can find a behavior that we can reinforce to get near the trailer. So she would, hang out. Well, why are we standing here forever? And well, I just decided to stand here forever. And she says, okay, well, I'm feeling kind of antsy. So as she's feeling antsy, she kind of takes a step towards the trailer, and I click and treat. And so we built up that click and treat where she's like, oh, I do something, and she's very smart. And then she's like, well, what did I do? And she thought, oh, the trailer, like that, and closer to that thing. Like, yeah, that's good, very good. This is over a course of probably 4 or 5 months. So by the end of that session, she was walking on and off of that trailer. And there were times where she would go have flashbacks, and she would start to be interested in going in the trailer using the same method. She would fly out of there and wouldn't want to go anywhere near it for another day. So one thing to remember about trauma, I can talk about the polyvagal system, the nervous system of mammals, and another talk because it's a big topic. But what you might sometimes find, if you're correcting a behavior that has a trauma past attached to it, your horse will get worse before it gets better. But your job is to be regulated and to be consistent. So when your horse changes, you don't change. The method's the same. You're going to keep reinforcing behaviors, and you're going to help guide that. And I just encourage you, if it is a trauma response, be very sensitive. It's an emotional thing for horses, just like it is for us. But it definitely, this works. But if I can say anything, leave you with that the method works. It's scientifically proven. All mammals learn this way. And it's a wonderful thing. So if I can do anything, I'd love to leave you with that hope that you can teach a horse anything. Let's see what else I have here. Okay, I know what this is. I briefly went through this. I'm just going to put some words to what I just talked about. If you'd like to take notes, this is a good way to break down what we just talked about here. So step number 1, we got to get the idea there. We got to get the light bulb to go off. So number 1, get the idea going. The next step, approximations. Once you have the idea there, start shaping it a little bit at a time. Okay? Which is shaping. So our third step, we're going to have approximations, break it down into small steps, shaping that behavior into the direction you want it to go. This is important, and this is a little bit advanced, but intermittent rewards. I'm just going to quickly talk about this. When you're rewarding your horse every single time, actually psychologically, it starts to get boring for them. Okay? And you might see this if you're teaching a horse in a rewards way like this. If it's every single time they're gonna actually stop doing it, or they're gonna do it less. So we're gonna start using intermittent rewards, which is, you're gonna give it maybe every third time they do it right. If you've ever gone to a casino, you know, you see like the people cranking the machines. You know, why is that so addictive? And it's a science. It's addictive because you never know when the treat's gonna come. Right? It might be the next one. It might be the next one. And this is exactly how mammals think. So as your horse starts to learn the behavior, you're actually going to use less and less reward. You can still reward, start backing it off, or ask for more. So they may stop, we might have a stay. I do this with my horses, I always back them off the rewards once they're done. And this isn't a withdrawal of a reward because they already know the expected behavior. So there is no more question, they know exactly what they should be doing. And I might do things like, I'm gonna walk around, or I'm gonna run to the other side of the arena and do some work over there, and you're over there 100 feet away, and your expectation is to stand still. So if I come back and they're still standing still, they might get a bonus reward, right? High value treats versus low value treats. High value treat, anyone likes the German muffin? Has anyone eaten one of those? Yeah, I tried one, it was actually not bad. So high value, molasses, a sweet apple, any of those things your horse really, really likes, use that as you start to back off. They're gonna wait for that bonus reward. You're gonna encourage them to keep doing that behavior, to look for that cha-ching, right? Keep their attention. All right, and then stimulus control. This is one I like to talk to people about when they're advanced a little bit more, or even when you're starting to do more advanced movements. So let's say we want to teach our horse to rear up, which is super exciting and it's fun, but we can all agree it's a little dangerous, right? Yeah, so the biggest question I get, and somebody's like, well, I want to teach my horse to rear up, but I'm worried they're going to do it all the time. That's a legitimate worry. So listen to that voice. The way that we work through that is we do stimulus control. After you've taught your horse to rear, you're going to teach them when not to rear. And this is important. So you probably will be adding corrections once the horse is excited. I get to rear, right? You're going to reinforce not rearing, or you're going to give them a correction when they rear when they've not been asked to. So you're going to refine that. Okay, and that's very important with these higher end movements because yes, they can be dangerous. So we're going to teach the horse to do something, and then when not to do something. And it's called stimulus control because there's a lot of stimulus all around the horse. A little kid might come by, maybe the cue is raising the whip in the air, and the little kid's got the whip in the air like they do. And the horse is like, oh yeah, rear, okay? So that's something that once the horse learns how to rear, I might go around with my whip, not looking at the horse because my cue is always in front of them. So I might be next to them and just nonchalantly doing this. If they rear, there's gonna be a correction. So I'm taking that down and saying, there's a lot of stimulation. You may only rear when I am in front of you and I give you your cue. You're going to control the stimulus around that might cause them to do that. Does that make sense? Okay, it is an important one, so. And then we evaluate. So once you've gone through this with your specific chosen behavior that you would like to teach your horse, and you have worked on this for a few weeks, step back, look at what you have, go back to your sheet. You might want to add to it. You might have thought of a different step or a different stimulation, or you might have a new thing your horse came up with that you did not want them to do. Go back to your list. Use it like a journal. Go back and edit it a little bit, adjust it as you learn from your horse, and then start all over again. Start from the beginning. Let's see if we can refine this even more, right? So I have found for myself that my first step one, my cues, will change sometimes because I find something else I want to teach my horse and the cue is too close. It's different. So you might want to go back and adjust your cue a little bit so that you can mix it with another one. For example, I might have, when I'm standing next to my horse and they're facing this way, I like them to back up with a tap on the chest, and as I walk backwards, they stay with me. but I'm also teaching one of my horses to sit back and to do like a levad. Okay, so if a levad's a very low rear, and they have to sit back and get the weight on their haunch. And I'm doing that by asking him to lift in the chest by coming up against his neck, right? Very close to coming back and then up. Also, the Spanish walk is down here. And so that's where we start to break down those cues to be super specific as your horse gets advanced. I don't want to overwhelm you with all that. Just, that is something to think about when you choose your cue. All right, so what do we got next here? I'm doing time real close. All right, our rewards. We briefly talked about it, but food, okay? With the clicker training, I recommend. I don't have a lot of time, so I'm just going to go through this quickly because it's important. When I teach my horses to receive food, the horse is facing this way. I am next to them. Their chest is right here. They are only allowed to take that treat when it comes in front of their chest. Not here, not here, not here, nowhere. Only there. Okay, so I teach kids karate chop. If they go for your treat bag, or if they go for your hand, I just karate chop. They'll know to stay out of the way. And, you know, they're gonna, where's my treat? As soon as they move their head to the middle, you're going to give them that treat in front of their chest. So this teaches them over time is they will bring their head to the center and wait for it every time you click. So when I'm with my horses, especially when I have 2 or 3, it can get crazy because they all think they want a treat. So my advanced horses, they know when I click, they snap in position. They're like, yeah, I'm here, give me the treat. So you can use this method. You can put that as your goal behavior. You could maybe teach your horse that over the winter and teach them the treat receiving position to come to the middle, and you give the treat to them. Does that make sense to everybody? Is there any questions on that? No? Okay. Awesome. A few other rewards. Rest. Just, you're putting pressure on to teach them something, and as soon as they do it, let's listen to the birds for a second. You know, so just take the pressure off, rest. Low energy. You might be asking for something and you're using energy to move your horse's body, or you're using your energy as a cue. Or sometimes I'll walk trot next to my horse and have them mirror me. That's a high energy. When they do it right, I bring my energy back down and we might just walk. So bring your energy down. Scratches. Does everybody know their horse's favorite scratchy spot? Yeah, horses love that too. And then a release. So I trained my standard poodle. I saw a poodle here. Is there a poodle that they leave? Looks like a service dog, maybe. I love poodles. I have a standard poodle, and over COVID, I taught her a whole bunch of stuff. Did you know AKC has a trick dog competition online, so you can like certify your dog to be a trick dog? Anyway, I did that with my poodle, and I learned a lot about the cues that you can learn or teach your dog. So I started teaching my horse. So my horse is stay. I don't use the whoa anymore. I went to a barn and someone was like, "Did you just tell your horse to stay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I do. They're big dogs." So yeah, my horse is stay, and I walk and do something, and they'll stay put. Release. So dog training, use the word release, which is you're done. Go play. And it's super cute because dogs will tear away and they just know that they're done, the training's over, they can do what they want. So I started using that for my horses. And it was my cue, physical, hand on the neck, release, and then I turn and I leave. Opposite from the stay. So when they have stayed in their ground tie and they've done a great job, and I just cleaned the whole arena and I didn't move a muscle, I'm like, oh, my horse is so perfect. So I come up and like, oh, you're so smart, what a good job, release. Especially my mare, my red mare will tear off and buck and be so excited and just have a great time, and she loves it. And oftentimes she comes back for more, you know. So she was the one in the first picture rearing up. She has a lot of energy. All right, so that is another reward. This is a list of different things you can use. We covered the treat receiving posture. We talked about the high value food and low value foods here. Okay, here's my contact if you need to get a hold of me for anything. I am releasing a course next year. It is in progress, so feel free to reach out to me. I have cards here. Any